Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This morning's learning is sponsored by Debbie Rogel, a commemoration of her grandfather's yahrzeit, Robert Feldman, Neshama Shehev and Aliyah. Thank you very much, Debbie. Okay, chapter 15, verse 1. We were discussing yesterday Moshe Rabbeinu's, not Moshe Rabbeinu, different figure, Avram Avinu, Avram's encounter with the king of Stone after the war, and Avram saved him, and Avram saved Lot. We were discussing also Avram's encounter with Melchizedek, that we said Talmudic sources say that actually was Shem, the son of Noach. But after all that, chapter 15, verse 1, after these matters, Hayodvar Hashem al Avram, God spoke to Avram, b'machazeh limur. God spoke to Avram in a vision. Now it's interesting. First of all, this word in a vision. It's not that it's striking that God spoke to Avram in a vision. It's striking that God is described as speaking to Avram in a vision. Hashem has had communication with Avram before, and it hasn't said in a vision. It hasn't said that. So this is interesting here. And Hashem says to Avram, Al tiro Avram, do not be afraid, Avram. Anochi mogein lach. I will protect you. Scharcha harbe ma'od. Your merit is very much. Why would Avram be afraid? It's a striking thing. Hashem says to Avram, don't be afraid. Why would he be afraid? Your reward is great. Would Avram think his reward wasn't great? Does Avram think his reward is great? It's just difficult to understand what's going on in this pasuk. So Ramban on pasuk Aleph, Hayodvar Hashem al Avram b'machazeh. And okay, Hayodvar Hashem al Avram b'machazeh. Zocha ata Avram lioslo dvar Hashem b'machazeh bayom. This is the first time that Avram merited for God to speak to him during the daytime. Ki mitchila ha'senevuaso b'maros halayla. All earlier communication between God and Avram were in the visions of the night, presumably meaning while he was dreaming in his sleep. Presumably that's what it means. So the Ramban is explaining that this word b'machazeh, that God spoke to Avram in a vision, is extremely significant because this is a much higher level of prophecy. So at this stage, based on his sacrifices and his accomplishments and his growth as a person, Avram is now meriting this. Okay, the Ramban is also just interested. The word to Avram came in a vision. It seems like we're talking about different senses, right? In other words, you would think the word came, something heard. The word comes and something seen. He says it's reminiscent of the language by Har Sinai that the nation heard the voices. Saw the voices. The nation saw the voices. So it's a similar kind of language. Next Ramban, Al tira Avram, do not be afraid. Avram was afraid for two reasons. Min hamlachim pen yirbu tzivosam alav. He was afraid that the kings would strike back, right? He defeated the kings now, but maybe they're going to come back for payback. Haim o omdim tachtam, whether it be the kings themselves that they get defeated, whether it be deputies to them. Ubu milchama yarad v'nisveh, and that maybe he'll get pulled down in some war. Oh, yamo yavo lovas below zera. The other thing that Avram was afraid of is not war, but he's afraid he's going to leave this world without having children. So now God says, don't be afraid. Don't be worried about either one of these things. Firstly, I will be a shield to you. That was the language. I will be a shield to you, meaning he'll protect God. He'll protect Avram from war. V'od yeschar lechto im Hashem harbe ma'od. Then he adds, your reward is great. Your reward for going with me on this journey and doing all these things is tremendous, implying you will be blessed with a child. So that's how the Ramban is explaining this pasuk. There's a very beautiful sforno over here. It's the second sforno on pasuk Aleph. Scharcha, your reward. Now, why does Hashem need to tell Avram that his reward is great? So Ramban explained that what Hashem is telling Avram is, don't worry that you haven't had a child, that you have so much reward coming to you, you're going to have a child. There's a famous medrash that shows up in various ways throughout Chumash, certainly in the book of Bereshis, that the avos, the patriarchs, frequently were concerned that maybe nismatus chuyosam, that their merits would be lessened in some way. So Avram just had a terribly dangerous experience engaging in this war. So maybe there's only so many merits in the account. How many merits did Avram use up engaging in this war? And presumably he's still walking around today and he was victorious in the war thanks to divine assistance. So maybe he's not going to have a child anymore. Maybe he used up all of his points on surviving this war. So the Sforno has such an interesting pshat. Scharcha, lo dai, shlo ismatus chuyosecha b'shvil mashi tzalticha. Not only have your merits not become lessened because I saved you, aval imze yeschar lefulasech zos shegamalta chesed la'achicha v'zulaso. You're looking at it all wrong if you think that the fact that you engaged in this war means you're going to get less for yourself down the road. Not only did you not lose any merits because you were involved in this war, you gained tremendously because you endangered yourself to look out for Lot. Lahatzil gzulim biyad oshkim, that there were people who had been taken captive and you saved them from those who would afflict them. It's not just that you still have merit and it's okay. You've gained merit because you risked your life about this. Just a very nice formula to think about. Okay, moving on to verse 2. So God has just told Avram, everything's great. You have nothing to worry about. And Avram has a very, very poignant response. Vayomer Avram, and Avram says, Hashem Elokim matitan li. Hashem, God, what will you give to me? Va'anochi holech ariri. I don't have any children. Uven meshek beisi hu damesek Eliezer. And the person of my household, the successor in waiting of my household is my Damascus servant Eliezer. That's all I've got. So it's very nice that you tell me you're going to be with me, you're going to protect me, but where am I going with all of this? And of course, part of the context is God had promised Avram if he would go on this journey, he would make a nation from him. I don't even have a child. So what is the nation going to be through Eliezer? First Ramban on Pasuk Beis. Vayomer Avram Hashem Elokim matitan li. Hinei hitzaltani min hamalachim. You saved me from the kings, and that's wonderful. Avo min hakares lo ivtachta osi. But you haven't given me any assurance regarding having children. Rak omarta shetir b'li schar harbe. All you said is I'll have a lot of reward. Uma yaschari b'lo banim. But if I don't have a future, what's my great reward? V'hinei lo ola b'dato she'aschar agadol b'zeh olam haba. Now, why can't Hashem be saying to Avram, your great reward is going to be the next world? That is your future. So the Ramban says a really interesting thing. Avram did not entertain as a possibility that God was telling him, you're going to get rewarded in Olam Haba, the world to come, because that's a given. That's the way reward and punishment works, that if a person does good things in this world, they'll be rewarded in the next world. So it must be that when God says to Avram, you have a lot of reward coming to you, he's saying something's going to be good for him in this world. So Avram says, there's one thing that I want right now that you haven't given me. And however much money you're going to put in my checking account is lovely, but I want to have a child. There's no guarantees that things will go great for the righteous in this world. There is an assurance things will go well for the righteous in the world to come. So Avram doesn't think that God is assuring him he'll get good things in the world to come. He thinks he's telling him something about this world. So the second pshat the Ramban says is, why doesn't Avram think that Hashem is just saying to him, you'll get great olam haba? Is because Hashem says to him, your reward is harbe ma'od. It's a lot, very much. It's like a double language of abundance. So he says that Avram understands that Hashem is telling him, you'll be rewarded in this world and the next world. So he says to him, I'll be rewarded in this world. Well, what I really want is a child. Va'od, ki avtacha l'ma shahaya misyari mimen. The other thing is, Hashem kind of knows his customers. So there's one thing on Avram's mind. The one thing on Avram's mind is having a child. So Avram knows that Hashem knows his customers. So Hashem says, this is going to be great. This is going to be wonderful. You have so much reward. Avram says, yeah, but you know what I want, and you haven't told me anything about that. And so then Hashem responds by telling him he'll make his offspring numerous. Okay, so this is an interesting shot in the exchange between why Avram's response to Hashem makes sense based on what Hashem had said to him. But now the Ramban goes further. V'yesh Lecha lishol, there's reason to ask. Shekvar nemar lo la'Avram ki es kol ha'aretz asher Torah ro'eh l'cho etnena u'lezaracha ad olam v'samtia zaracha kafar ha'aretz. It was earlier in this week's parsha. Hashem says to Avram, I'll give your offspring the land. I'll make your offspring like the dust of the earth. So what does Avram mean when he says to Hashem, well, what's going to be with children? I told you were going to have children. Why are you bringing it up again? Why is Avram bringing this up again? Avram is sitting here, he's like, my gosh, Eliezer is going to be my heir. Did you listen to what God told you 2 chapters ago? What's going on? Does Avram believe God or does Avram not believe God? If Avram believes what God says to him, God already told him it's going to happen. And if Avram doesn't believe what God says to him, why is he wasting God's time? It's whatever God says isn't going to help you anyway. So what's Vatshuva? The answer is this is another. So I mentioned earlier that there's a classic thing that the patriarchs were worried that maybe their merits are used up in other fronts, such as risking his life for war. But another one is Shema Yikra Machet. That maybe things have changed. Maybe I've done things wrong. Maybe I no longer have the merits that I had before. Maybe I lost merits. Maybe I unintentionally sinned. And what God assured me before is no longer the case. Because, okay. Avram sees he's gotten older. And what God had told him 2 chapters ago about having a family and a nation still hasn't come to fruition. So he has to ask himself, of course I believe God's assurance, but it hasn't happened yet. So he thinks to himself, it must be that my sins held back the good. Another really interesting shot, another possibility, or really a variation on this, is that he thought to himself, maybe I'm going to be punished for the fact that I killed people in this war. Really, really interesting thing to think about. Even when someone talks to God, like Avram Avinu, we still can't always be sure. So the pshat is that Avram is concerned that maybe he's not going to merit all those promises because maybe he was engaged in this war, maybe it was inappropriate, maybe he shouldn't have gotten involved, maybe he killed too many people, and maybe things have changed. So really interesting. So we discussed this morning the Ramban's explanation of why Avram would be concerned. We also and the pshat that the Ramban had in the assurances God is giving him. We also discussed the Sforno in terms of the message God is giving him, that it's not that he's lost merits, he's only gained merits from going to this war. But we also have now discussed how Avram's response about, well, what about a child? The Ramban explains how it's a very logical response to the previous pasuk. And we also addressed the issue of why does Avram need more confirmation he's going to have a child? And the Ramban explained this idea about concern that maybe through his actions, he has less merit than he did before.